Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, so we are welcome to the Parsha group, the ladies Parsha group, and Parshas Vayechi, which in our Chumash here, it's on page 318, 319. And this is the final culmination of the book of Genesis. This is the last Parsha, the summation of all the book, and it's been quite a whirlwind, really, hasn't it? From the creation of the world until the Jewish people coming down to Egypt, and the beginning, in a sense, the very beginning of the exile. Although things, of course, were still pretty good for the Jews up until the end of this Parsha, until next week's Parsha, we start reading about in earnest about the actual exile. And many of the commentaries point out that it says that Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim sheva esrei shana. In the first sentence we read about it, he lived there 17 years. 17 years. And he was, some say that the 17 years that he spent in Egypt were in fact the very best years of his life. The very best years. And in fact, the hinting to, of course, because the word 17 has the same numeric value. Yes, as Tov, exactly. Tov. Yeah, good, exactly. So they were seen as being very, very good years because, of course, there was everything, apart from the fact that they weren't in Eretz Yisrael, yes, he had no disturbances. Exactly. No one was chasing after him. He was with exactly. All the kids were together. The family were together. There was a reconciled family. Joseph's grandchildren. Joseph's children have his own grandchildren, and it was an absolutely blissful time for Yaakov, who really had a very, very tough life until that time. So. And the fact is, you could say, well, I mean, Egypt was not exactly a very nice place to be, and it wasn't. I mean, they had a very beautiful, I don't know, probably like Southern California there, in the Goshen area was probably a very nice, or southern Spain, Yeah, it was a beautiful part of land. It was the best. It was the most, it was the gorgeous, choice place of land there. But of course, it was a very kind of an immoral sort of a society. So it was not very pleasant. But of course, the reason why it was so great as a country wasn't because of it as a country. It's because immediately we actually read in the previous parsha that it says that Vayishlach lefonav Yehuda lahoros, that Yaakov, when they came down, he sent Yehuda beforehand. He sent him lahoros. Now, what is lahoros? Lahoros means literally to teach. What does that mean? Teach what? So Rashi, based on what the rabbi said, that he sent him there to set up a yeshiva, an academy, where they would be able to learn. And that's why that even, so to speak, in Egypt, where even in the most negative places, if you're learning and you'll be able to immerse yourselves in studying Torah, learning Torah, and spiritual pursuits, then it's wonderful. Then it's really good. It doesn't have to be, the negativity does not need to affect so much. So that's why it was such a special time. Now, I'm just going to make a bracha. Now, just want to point out to you, and we mentioned this before, but in this parsha, this is one of the very few parshas, in fact, the only parsha we know in the Torah that is what is called susuma. Susuma means to be closed. What does it mean to be closed? Well, if you look in the Torah, if you look in the Tikkun, the Torah, we know you read out of like it's actually the Torah. After every parsha, there is a break. There's a break that will go to the end of the line, or there's always a break.
Yeah.
Okay. And this sort of is a division between parshas.
You meant that it has a flow, or not? I meant that it.
No. There's a physical break in the letters here.
Oh.
Here, I can show you. It's actually written.
Where?
Yeah, I'll show you. I'll give you an idea. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm about to find a break in the parsha. Here now, Yisro. Is it by Yishma Yisro? This is the parsha's Yisro, right? Now you see there's a break at the end. You see a break. So in the end, there's gap. There's a gap in the, and then we say Vayishma Yisro, right? Now sometimes, quite often. Oh, hello. Nice to see you, Rona. This is Rona Davis. Yes, it's her first time coming to the Shiur. Yes, welcome. This is Anne and Dina. Hi, Dina.
Oh, I think your husband's the host.
No.
This is different.
Yeah. So, do you understand? Have you got the idea? Yes. Someone else coming?
Yeah.
Here's another one. Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha. And you see, there's a gap. There's a gap at the end. Yes. Now, in every parsha, there's always a gap. There's always a gap. But in Parsha's Vayechi, there's no gap. There's no gap at all. There's no gap. Hello. Oh, hello. Shalom Aleichem. We're discussing the gap. A different kind of gap, not the gap that the kids wear the shirts. A different gap, and we're on page 318, 319. So in Parsha's Vayechi, if I can find it for you here, I'll actually try and show it to you. Here we go, Vayechi Yaakov. Now, can you see? It says Vayechi Yaakov. Can you see? Vayechi Yaakov. This is Parsha's Vayechi. Can you see? There's no gap between the last word. I mean, they put here a little like a tiny little gap. There's no gap of letters. So it goes. So this is called it's closed. Can you see? My here Vayechi. Okay. Can you see Vayechi? So there's no gap. Oh, that's what we're going to discuss. Yeah. That's what we're going to discuss. That's the very first question in the parsha that Rashi asks. Why is there no gap? Because all other parshas in the Torah have gaps in between. Okay, and Rashi says this. You know why? I'll tell you why it's closed. He brings two reasons. So the first reason, we're on page 318, 319. So I'll just tell you what Rashi says. You can, if you know Rashi, you could look at it, read it inside. It says, "Lafisha kevan sheniftar Yaakov Avinu," because when Yaakov Avinu passed away, nistemu eineihem v'libam shel Yisrael mitzvot Hashem. The eyes and the hearts of the Jewish people were closed because of the sorrows, the pain of the slavery. They started to, page 318. They started to. They started to what's the word? To subjugate them. Yeah. So that was why this is closed. The eyes and the hearts were closed. You understand? That is the idea of. That's why Parsha Vayechi is closed. It's kind of hinting to us a sort of negative situation, right? He brings another interpretation here that at one point, you read later on in the parasha, that Yaakov wanted to reveal when would be the end of days, when Mashiach would come, when would be the final ending of Mashiach, when Mashiach comes. But he wanted to do that, but his mind, the prophecy disappeared from him. Hashem closed it off. He closed it off from him. Yeah. So therefore, that's another reason why it's closed. He lost his prophecy with regard to revealing exactly when Mashiach is going to come, exactly when it's right, because it's going to be a very long time. Well, it hasn't affected us because, you know, people could think that if it would be such a long time until Mashiach would come, people would be a bit, they were a bit despairing, give up hope, you know, like there's not much incentive to do very much, you know what I mean? So it was best left, you know, that Hashem said, look, just,
Just get on with your life.
just get on with your life, and
you know.
Hashem will help. Maybe you could even speed it up. But okay, but that's a different session. Maybe we'll get onto that later. But I want to discuss a little bit that first interpretation that we just mentioned, right? That their hearts were closed, their hearts and eyes were closed because of the servitude. Now, let me ask you a question. When did the servitude, the slavery begin? When did it begin? Do you know when it began? When it really began, in earnest. It really began. When Rashi says in Parshas Vayechi that it didn't start until after all the brothers died. After all the brothers died, right? As long as the brothers were alive, one of the brothers were alive. The oldest one to be alive was Levi. So as long as any one of the brothers were alive, there was no servitude. After the brothers died, started the servitude. The question: if they're all still alive, I mean, Yaakov died. Okay, he died, but that doesn't mean that the servitude died. So why is Rashi saying the servitude started after he died? It didn't start after he died, but after the brothers died. That's one question. Another question is, who was in charge of Egypt at that time? Who was running the show? Huh? Joseph. Joseph was running the show. So if Joseph's running the show, there's not going to be any servitude, is there? There's not going to be any problems, right? That's the second question. And we've got a third question. Perhaps we could say, well, I mean, it says that the eyes and the hearts were closed because of the servitude. Now, what, that's a bit strange statement. I mean, the heart, you recommend that you understand, that's a sort of an emotional thing. And you understand that means the heart should be closed, mean it was upsetting, yes? You understand it's upsetting. Feelings of the heart, you're feeling upset, the servitude has begun. But what's this business of eyes? Your eyes were closed? The eyes were closed because of the servitude? What does that mean exactly? Yeah? So we can try and understand this by understanding it was a certain change in perspective. What happened? Let's if I can I'm gonna skip now. In order to answer the question, I'm gonna skip to the end of the Parsha. Right to the end of the Parsha, okay? Okay. And I want you to go to page. The question is why are we saying that the servitude started? That the servitude started when Yaakov died. When Yaakov died, it's not true. By the way, another interesting question is the Parsha is called Vayechi. Yeah, he lived. And yet the whole Parsha is speaking really about the death of Yaakov, which is interesting, isn't it? Because in Judaism, it's about the legacy as well, living the legacy. Interesting.
Oh.
Interesting. Yes,
oh
yes. Yes, I remember. I used to be in the Kedusha. You're right. There's a fast, but then there's a fast. You also do a fast on Zion, but that's not Zion Oder. That's Zion Oder.
But how would they commemorate that on Shabbos? What's different?
Yes. Also, same idea. That's even more so. Right at the beginning, it speaks about the fact she passed away, and the whole thing was to do with the burial of Zion.
Oh, I see. So people who work for that.
Yeah. So, but they have the whole idea, the same idea here as you know, it was about the children. It says later on that because it actually says he didn't die. Funny enough, when you speak about Yaakov's death, it doesn't say Vayomos. He died. It says Vayigva, like he breathed his life. But it doesn't, it always says Vayomos. No, it doesn't say that. So it says that he's actually still alive.
Like Mace, Ma?
Must,
Must
yes,
be
yes,
right.
Vayomos. It doesn't say that, Vayomos, and he died, right? So they say, it says Yaakov Avinu, the rabbi said, Yaakov Avinu lo Mace. He says, but through his children, he's still alive. He still is alive. Through, so Mafsaro, just as his children are alive, he too is alive. Through parents live through their children, don't they? They live through their children. Anyway, so now let's just point out at the end of this parsha. Here, I want to point out on page 338. Page 338, 20 pages on 339. Yeah. So in Pasuk Tezvov, Vayira Achei Yosef ki mes avihem. The brothers saw that their fathers, they got back from burying him. Yes, in Moras HaMachpelah. Yeah, they got back from burying him, and they said like this. They saw that Yaakov had died. Now it says Takit ki mes. Right? Vayomru lu yistamenu Yosef. They thought, oy vey, Yosef's going to now really get angry. He's going to get so he's going to pay us back for all the terrible thing we did. We sold him, and we are really scared. Now this is a bit strict. What's going on? After 17 years, right? They all lived together. Everyone was. It was a literally happily ever after story. Everybody was b'shulam. Everybody ate. It was. Now here comes a very interesting. Rashi explains here. Why did the brothers suddenly panic? Why did the brothers panic and suddenly think that Joseph's going to? So Rashi explains a very specific reason. You have an idea?
Maybe because now that his father had passed away,
He can be
yeah, he could be.
Well, that's what they said. That's what they said. That's what they say. That this was all. And here's the reason why they thought. Why did they think? Did they just think that now? And that's what it says. Vayiru, they saw. They saw. That's the key. What do you mean they saw? They saw now. They suddenly thought. Like before that, they think. Oh yeah, he was really harboring anger all those years, and was just waiting for Dad to die. Now I'm gonna get you guys, right? No, because they saw something that happened after Yaakov died. So Rashi explains again. Rashi explains a very interesting thing. He says that while Yaakov was alive, everyone used to eat together.
Oh.
They used to eat together, and they were all eating together, and they would eat by Yosef's table. It seems, yes. That's what it sounds to. Let me just a second. It says, it says, "Hayuragilin is oid al shulchan." Yeah, they would all eat by Yosef's table, right? Because Yosef, of course, he was the prime minister. So he's going to have the best food in town. He's going to have the best gefilte fish, the best kishka. He's going to have the best. You know what I'm saying? It's just the most amazing you can imagine. And they all came to him, and it was a wonderful thing. And of course, Yaakov was there as well. Can you imagine that table? Wow, what a Shabbos Tish, that was, yeah. And the Zmiris, right? So but you know what happened after Yaakov passed away? Yosef didn't invite them anymore.
Right.
Didn't invite them anymore. Now here's an interesting question, and he didn't invite them. So now they thought, what's going on here? He doesn't like us anymore. Only when Dad was around, he's invited everybody. Now he's not inviting. He's upset with us. Right? Now here's the question. Here's the interesting thing. Why did he do that? The Parsha explained. Some of the Parsha explained. Why did he do that? He actually had a good reason for doing this. He was actually doing it because he felt. You see, when Yaakov was alive, and they were sitting at the table. Now Yaakov insisted that Yosef, it was Yosef's table. He's the balabos. He's the right. He sits at the head of the table. And who's going to argue? I mean, even Yaakov himself said that Yosef. I mean, even Yosef wanted his father to sit, but the father said, "No, Yosef, you're the king of Egypt, or the second in command. Yeah, you are sitting at the head of the table." I'm sure Yaakov was pretty much up there. He probably was right next to him, right? But this made Yosef feel very uncomfortable because, first of all, he was one of the younger sons, right? And he's got Reuben is the firstborn. Okay, so he felt that Reuben's maybe feeling a bit slighted. I mean, he's not, or Yehuda was referred to as a king. Eventually, Malchus came from Yehuda. The kingship came from Yehuda. Yeah. So, Yosef was very uncomfortable with the situation of having to be at the head of the table. He didn't like this at all. Made him very uncomfortable. So, rather than what's going to happen is he's going to invite everybody else, right? So what's going to be? There's going to be a whole argy-bargy, right? He's not
where?
who sits where? He's not going to want to. He's not going to want to sit at the head of the table. My father tells me to. I don't have any choice. I have no choice. I'm kibbutz aim. My feelings of concern and consideration for my older brothers, that takes. I can't. I'm saying my father told me I've got to sit. It made me feel uncomfortable. Yeah, for all those years, he was uncomfortable being at the head of the table. And finally, he did Dayenu. I'm not having it now. I don't have to do this anymore. So they misinterpreted this. Sometimes when you do something out of consideration for somebody else, it's worthwhile telling them. It's worthwhile telling them. Now, I suppose the reason he didn't tell is because Yosef assumed that the brothers would figure that out on themselves, by themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, because he knew already there'd been all sorts of problems because of this, favoritism, and therefore they would have figured out for themselves that Yosef, the reason why Yosef's not invited is not because he doesn't like them anymore, or he's now suddenly feeling, revenge.
I think Yosef, a lot of the problems that happened to Yosef was because he lorded it over his brothers in the first place.
Well,
and he got
yes,
and he also related stories with Russian Horror about that his brothers ate
correct.
And all this.
Yeah.
Yes, but that was a long time before.
That's why his brothers really hated him.
Yes, but there was no hatred anymore.
No, now it has not.
Yeah, but they had projected and thought that because they had been so nasty to him, that they thought that he is, but really he didn't have any negative feelings at all about that.
But
He just was considerate for the covet of Reuben and Yehuda. That's why I didn't want to invite them.
No, I thought also that maybe if he would have said something, given the explanation, that the brothers would have talked him out of it, in a different way, in a positive way.
Well, it does. It's a bit academic, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit academic because he didn't tell them. But regardless, that's what. But how does that help us here? Well, what's it got to do with that original question, right? The original question was about they started feeling the servitude. So here's the interesting thing. So, when the Egyptians, you imagine this, the Egyptians, of course, they gave all the covenant, Yaakov, his sons, the family, everything. You can imagine, all the covenant. Now, what do you think when they saw Yosef? When they saw Yosef doing what he did, I'm sure Yosef did not explain to his entourage why he's not inviting all the brothers anymore. He doesn't say, well, I've got slight, concerns about, coverage for my brother. You're not going to explain that. He doesn't need to. He's the king, right? But when the Egyptians saw what was going on, when the Egyptians saw that that Yosef himself is not treating them quite with the same deference as was before, then, now maybe the attitude of the Egyptians changed a bit. And they didn't quite give them as much cover. They thought, Yosef doesn't, he doesn't treat them with the same level of covet, of glory and honor. So therefore they don't have to. And guess what? They noticed the brothers noticed.
Yeah.
They noticed that the Egyptians are not treating quite the same way. And therefore they noticed now. So that was, that's what it says, their eyes and their hearts were closed. They noticed that there'd been a subtle change, or a not so subtle change, in the behavior of the Egyptians towards them, which in a sense, they knew that there's going to be some kind of slavery, and who knows what the Brisbane Restorment is going to be. So they started to realize that this was the beginning of the decline, and how eventually it led to their enslavement. Right?
It also have to do with, I remember the pastor that said provided some feed for them, something in order for them to.
No, that's the Egyptians.
The Egyptians,
Yeah. Helachem Zera,
why they were able to
enslave them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that relates more to the idea of them circumcising themselves, I believe, because they gave them a schus.
Yeah.
They gave the Egyptians a certain merit, which allowed them to later enslave them. Although he felt that, as we mentioned before, I think in the Parsha, he felt that he had to do that because they belonged to him, and just Abraham was commanded to circumcise all of the slaves who belonged to him. So Joseph, he felt that as well. He felt that they needed to circumcise all the Egyptians who belonged to him. So that was that. But there was no real enslavement. It's just that their hearts and their eyes noticed, and they saw, we're on the way down now. We can see what's going on here. But it was,
When you were saying that he didn't invite his people,
yeah.
would that be in some way in respect of his father? Because he was kind of like the head of the table, but as father's gone, he didn't want to feel like a replacement of some kind of.
Well, yeah. Well.
Maybe he didn't want to feel that he was taking that position when his father was not there.
Yeah, but yes. I mean, that in a sense is what we're saying, because if he would sit at the head of the table, which he would, so to speak, feel expected to, because Yaakov had said so, and he would be expected to, but that's what he had problems with. Right. He didn't like that idea because he thought he's going to make Reuben and Yehuda uncomfortable now, like because now that Yaakov is gone, he doesn't. He felt he wouldn't want to sit at the head of the table, even though he would be expected to. So sometimes it's this is actually, they say this is one of the reasons why Avram left his father Terach, even though he was alive, when he left him and went to Eretz Yisrael. And one of the reasons that the Rebbe gives, the reason actually, is because it says that Terach did tshuva later on in his life, right? So therefore, now there's a little bit of a dilemma, because so obviously a child has to give a parent kibbutz number 8. Everybody knows that, right? Now, it doesn't matter how old you are, right? You can be 67, 60 years old, your father's 80 or 79, right? You're going to give it up at aim. Now, what's the problem? What happens if the son becomes a Talmid Chacham? If the son becomes a scholar, you're supposed to give cover to a Talmid Chacham. So the whole discussion in the Gemara, who gives cover to who? And it's a bit unresolved. It's a bit unresolved. Because what takes precedence here? Is it the fatherness, or the scholarliness of the Torah? It's an argy-bargy, right? So therefore, to avoid this whole thing, you sit, you stand, you sit, it's actually it's a real thing. The Rebbe, I remember there was a Melamed from the Rebbe when there was a little kid. There was a Melamed, right? And after many, many years, he came to visit the Rebbe in Yechidus, and he was a very old man. Okay, and the Rebbe wouldn't sit down before he sat down, but he didn't want to sit down before the Rebbe sit down, because he's the Rebbe. He's the Rebbe, and it was a whole argy-bargy. These are real problems in people who care about, the truth of what the Torah is about. So, in a sense, you could look at it like Yosef had the same sort of idea, maybe, that he didn't want to get into the whole, who's going to have the more copy. me, they're going to want me, and I'm going to want them, and well, it was not going to end. We'll never sit down to eat. Maybe that. So therefore, he just avoided the whole thing altogether, and that's why he didn't invite them. So it's a convenient sort of a thing, but unfortunately, it had unintended circumstances, unintended consequences, which obviously is. We're just explaining here why I say Vayechi. Why is there no? Well, that's why there's no break, because it's closed. You understand? So things start to get closed off. The hearts, the eyes saw. The Egyptians weren't treating him with the same level of reverence as when he was alive. Okay, now we move on to as soon as this Parsha gets straight in, we know Yaakov, one of the last things he wanted to do before he blessed his children, right? What was the last thing he wanted and he asked Joseph, his son, to do? Was to bury him in Eretz Yisrael, okay? To take him back to Eretz Yisrael, right? And we read about that on the next page 320, 321. I don't want to be buried, and I want you to take me out of here and bury me in Ma'oras HaMachpelah. Yes, back to Eretz Yisrael, where everybody's buried. Adam and Chava, Avram and Yitzhak, Avram and Sarah, Yitzhak and Rivka, yeah? Leah was buried there. We don't read about the death of Leah. We don't exactly know when she passed away. He didn't know. We don't really know, but it seems that she was already at that point. She was ensconced in Ma'oras HaMachpelah. She merited to be. It seems it must have been. It doesn't. We don't read about Leah going down. It doesn't. I don't think it mentions about Leah going down. No, there's no mention of it. So we just don't know. We don't really know exactly when. We don't, apart from Sarah and Rochel. Okay, we don't really know that the death of the Mohos is not really spoken about. Really, it's not mentioned. Yeah. Anyway, so we say what does Joseph say? He says in verse Lamed, his father asks him to do something. So what do you think he says? Sure, Dad, no problem. I'll do what you want. And then what does he say? Something very strange. Vayechi Shovali, I want you to swear to me. You know what? He swore to him. And then he bowed down. Vayishtachu Yisrael Harosh, bowed down. That's interesting. What's he bowing down to? That's a whole interesting idea in itself. So let's just discuss now for a minute. Do you think that Yaakov, when he asked his son Yosef to do a favor and bury him in Eretz Yisrael, and Yosef says yes, do you think that Yaakov would believe Yosef?
Yeah.
He would, wouldn't he? I mean, and Yosef is a pretty powerful person. Okay. And even though there may be obstacles, yes, okay, there may be obstacles, but surely obstacles does not require you to ask your son to swear. That's a very swearing, it's like a very strong thing to make an oath. You make an oath that you will do it. He already said, yes, I'll do it, Dad. I'm fine, no problem. I'm the Prime Minister, we'll sort it. No, I want you to swear to me. I want you to make an oath. Huh? Or that he himself would do it, not somebody else? I don't think, surely that was not.
And what difficulties he had, whatever it took, he was going to do it.
Yes, but isn't that good enough still just to say, yes, I will? I mean, you would have thought so. That's what I'd say. You would have, because Joseph, when he said, well, sometimes when we ask favors from people, nowadays, people love to say, Bli Neder. Bli Neder. Im Yitz Hashem, I'm going to try my best. Im Yitz Hashem, Bli Neder, right? And I like, but if Yosef is not saying, well, Dad, yeah, I'm really going to try. And Im Yitz Hashem, I will do my best to bury you in Eretz Yisrael. But Bli Neder. Bli Neder. No. in those days, there's no such thing as a bli neder and Yitz Hashem Yehi Rotzon. With Yosef, this is not about bli neder, right? He would do it, no question. So what is this oath about?
Yeah, the objection to his brothers.
Why? Why would the brothers care? The brothers were the father. Yeah, Yaakov was Beretz Yisrael. I mean, they all went back. They all participated in the burial. Well, remember, Yosef was in charge. Yosef was running the country. Okay, right? So here we come on to the idea. I mean, look, there is a simple pshat that they understood that people say that that Paro wouldn't allow it. He wouldn't allow it, in theory, because Yosef's running the country. So Yosef can't say, well, I'm off for a couple of weeks to Marbella, or something. You know what I mean? I'm going down to the Nile, and he's in denial. So I mean, you know what I mean? You're the prime minister. I mean, nowadays the prime minister goes on holiday anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody goes on holiday. They once asked the Rebbe. So interesting. Asked the Rebbe. They said, "Why? You 40 years. You can take a holiday." And people, the family are older, the Hasidim, they used to say, well, I mean, the Rebbes, all the previous Rebbes, they also went. They went on vacation, went to holiday, but you not. You know what the Rebbe said? He says, in previous generations, he said, when if a Rebbe went out on holiday, he said there were always some Hasidim. The Hasidim would stay behind. They would hold the fort. He says, but nowadays, everybody goes on holiday. So if I go, who can hold the fort? That's what he said. Right? So, I mean, Yosef was a very conscientious person. He is running the country. He can't take. I mean, he might take a day off or 2 days off here and there, but that was a big kind of trip to go to Eretz Yisrael, and they didn't have charter flights then or anything. You know what I'm saying? It was exactly. In the carriers, no trains or nothing. British Rail, yeah. So that is this one simple thing. But again, I mean, sometimes we think certain things are impossible. But that is a bit of an exaggeration from our own point of view. We think they can't be done, but the truth of the matter is, it's just it may be difficult or very difficult. Yes. Or very difficult indeed, right? But it's not impossible. You just have to work at it. You have to work hard, work very hard, and you'll get there. You will succeed. So maybe the idea is, Yaakov was telling him, you may think it's quote unquote impossible, and even if Paro tries to put a spanner in the works, you can overcome it. It won't be an impossible thing for you to overcome, because impossible does not really, that's one sort of simple way of looking. There's another beautiful interpretation of understanding, and this is like it's when I say machlokas, you know what I mean? A machlokas means a difference of opinion. Yeah, a difference of opinion. Yeah, it's not an argument in the face of a fight, but a dispute of greatness by tzaddikim. Now, here's an amazing thing. You see, Yaakov, he felt very important that he needed to be buried in Moras Machpelah. Why? I mean, why? I mean, what's wrong with being buried in Egypt? I mean, Yosef was buried in Egypt. Remember, Yosef was buried in Egypt, and Yosef said, when you guys leave, take me out of here, bring me back. And that's what they did, right? Everybody's right. So why does he want to be buried in Moras Machpelah? So his cheshbon, how do you say cheshbon? His calculation, his reasoning was that the Jewish people need a focus of that great spiritual essence in Eretz Yisrael, in Moras Machpelah, which represented the birthplace of the Jewish people, their root, their anchor. And that would be something that even though they were now in Egypt, they could aspire for and be inspired to return to, right? That was almost like the idea of when a person is in prison, or if a person is in prison, you can't get out of prison on your own. Or if you're in a pit, like Yosef was in a pit, that was the prison. Yes, that was about bor, similar to a bor, right? The prison was just a massive pit in the ground, right, with various rooms and chambers. Yeah. So how do you get out of a pit? You can't get out of a pit on your own. How can you get out? You can only get out of a pit if somebody puts a rope down. Well, if they throw a rope down, yeah, then you can climb up out of the pit. So Yaakov, in a sense, knew that there's going to be an exile, there's going to be tough, there's going to be rough, there's going to be, So therefore, him being buried in Maras Machpelah, in a sense, was establishing the spiritual rope, if you like, that would allow the people to pull themselves out and come back to Eretz Yisrael. Because he was the last piece of the Maras Machpelah jigsaw. Because there were eight graves there, as we mentioned: Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, Adam and Sarah, Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov, and Leah. Okay, so he was the last one. And when you put that last piece in, then it's like, boom! Now it's complete. Now it works. You put very good, very good. 8 is good. It's supernatural. It brings a power, but it's like that jigsaw. But once that, if you can't find that last piece, the jigsaw, it's so irritating. It's just, yeah. And once you've got it, you can frame it, put it on the wall. It's a piece now, right? So, and with any machine, if some little piece is missing in a computer, like this computer here, right? Well, everything works in a computer. There's only one thing that doesn't work: sound. Now, in the old days, you never had sound anyway. We just had beep, bop, bop, beep. So here, it works, but it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Unless a computer has sound, that's why I'm using my phone. Because it's like a mini computer. So he was that last missing piece, and that's why he insisted on being buried in Eretz Yisrael. No messing around. And that's why he said sweat. Because he knew that Yosef had a different husband. He had a different reason. And Yosef's reasoning, what was his reasoning? Very simple. He says, there's a whole principle of imi bitzorosi. Imi bitzorosi. That Hashem is with me even in my time of sorrow. There's time, that was the whole idea of the burning bush, that even though the Jewish people are the bush burning, there's troubles, difficulties, Hashem is with them in the flames of right? Even though they're in a very difficult circumstance, Hashem is with them, and they will not be consumed. Yes? So the fact that Yosef wanted to be buried in Egypt was to give them a chizuk, that here is Yosef, they can go to his gravesite, they can get chizuk from him being buried there with them. He's with them. Yes? So now Yaakov understood this, that he thought that Yosef felt that if imagine if Yaakov would also be buried in Egypt. Whoa, you got Yaakov and Yosef to be buried in Egypt. That's not just a double chizuk, that's a triple, quadruple chizuk. No, but it's not about.
No, I'm saying about all the other.
No, but it was about chizuk. It would be giving chizuk to Klal Yisrael. Right? Now that was a good reasoning on Yosef's part. It wasn't a bad reasoning. It was actually a proper and appropriate. And that's why I'm saying the differences are big tzaddikim have these a different reasoning, different cheshbon, a different perspective, right? And that's why he said sweat. Because he knew there's a temptation that Yosef had, a spiritual temptation, to really want his father to be buried there with him in Mitzrayim. And then later they'll go out. But Yaakov said, no, I understand. Don't worry. You'll be here, I'll be there, because that's how we need the whole Exodus to happen. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Okay? So that's the reason why, actually we read in the next story about the different hashbon about parents to their children and you know, what happened with the blessing to Ephraim and Manasseh, you know, which we read about on page 324. You can read through 225. We read about the fact that you know, Yosef, Yaakov, when he went to bless the children, Ephraim and Manasseh did a bit of a funny thing. Yes, the whole crossover hand thing. Yes, and although Manasseh was the firstborn and Ephraim was the second, so, and Yosef, of course, wanted them to be blessed. Yes, so Yaakov does the most bizarre thing, and he says he does his hands like this, right? And he's blessing because the right is going to the right is the prime hand, and the left is the hand. So so Yosef, he sees what's going on here, and he grabs hold of his father's hand. No, Dad, sorry. Remember, this is the first one. This is the second one. Now that's pretty radical, isn't it? What he was doing. I mean, you want to just say, excuse me, Paula, could I just wanted to mention to you about, you know, the way you're doing your hands. He did, like, grabbed his father, like, you know, that's very strong, very strong. How could you do such a thing? So again, the Parsha explains. Rabbi explains. Yosef had been the subject of favoritism from his father, as we discussed, and he had gone through a very rough period. Yes, very rough period due to that favoritism. Right, coat many colors, the whole. Now suddenly he sees his father's doing the same thing again. Rabbi Shalom. Here we go again. Yes, this is a very uncomfortable deja vu, right? So that's why he's like, you know. So he takes Colin's hand, you know. He says, we can't have that. What is? Look at the last verse, 324, 325. By Mo'en Aviv, his father refused. Yadati b'ni, yadati. Don't worry, I know who's who. I know who's what. Yeah. He'll also be a big shot. You know, Manasseh's going to be a knacker. Who's going to come from Manasseh? The judge of Gidon. Rashi explains. But Ephraim's going to be even greater. Who's going to come from Ephraim? Yoshua, the great Yoshua, who led the Jewish people to victory in Eretz Yisrael. He gave them the land. He vanquished all the kings in Eretz Yisrael. He taught the Jewish people Torah, right? And therefore, he really should get the precedence over here. Now, you could ask, well, I mean, although Yaakov understood with prophecy about Ephraim and Manasseh, surely he understood about the problems caused with Joseph's so-called favoritism. You could answer that. I mean, could ask that. And therefore you'd say, well, why? I mean, why would he want to do that again? Or, you know, just say, maybe the first ball should have been Ephraim, and the second ball should have been Manasseh. The truth is, let's look at this on different levels here. I mean, first of all, on a sort of a more simple level, do we know for sure that Yaakov ever found out about what exactly happened? Did the brothers ever come to their father and say, well, to tell you the truth, Dad, you know when we sent you that shit, the coat with the blood on it, you know, just wanted for the record let you know that they certainly didn't tell. They never told him. Well, how would he find out then? What about Joseph? Would Joseph have told him? Would Joseph have told him?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have told. Why?
Didn't he used to be a type of?
Well, he used to be. Yeah, you're absolutely right. he was a little bit of a snitchy. That's right. That was when he was 17 years old. But you can be pretty sure that he learned his lesson, not to snitch on his brothers. Okay, by the time he grew up a little bit more mature. That's one of the reasons they hated him. That's right, and he knew that. He knew that, right? So it's and more importantly, you might want to say, is he's not going to tell Lashon Hara about his brothers. And even though when he was a young kid, he kind of did. He grew up, I'm sure, by that time. By the time he was king, and at the end of the day, so in other words, Yaakov never knew of the negative consequences, the drastic negative consequences of what he himself had done by giving him the favoritism, if you like, right? And you could look at it even a little bit deeper, and you could say, well, even in the reality, even if somehow you want to say that Yaakov was aware at some point, maybe at some point Hashem revealed it to him, right? Because Hashem had concealed everything from from him. That Yosef was alive, he concealed from, yeah. So you might want to say that at the end of the day, there was no negative consequences, because although it was a tough time, at the end of the day, it led to a fantastic thing. Yosef became king. He saved everybody. He saved them from famine. He gave them all the cover. They came down to Egypt. The great covered. Yeah, they weren't schlepped down in chains. They said our forefathers would have had to come down to Egypt even with chains necessary. But no, this way happened. Everything was hunky-dory. They came down with great honor and great glory. They, like we say, they hang out in Gold's Green and Southern California or whatever they were living there, and that was great. And so there wasn't negative consequences. Okay, and that's why.
Yeah, I mean, his father lived in anguish.
Yes, but even in retrospect, once you realize a person, you realize that although there was anguish, it wasn't. There's a great thing that Hannah, daughter, Hannah Lubin, she used to tell us. You've probably heard it. It's like something happened to something, and you thought, oh, that's terrible, and then somebody would say, not over yet, it's not finished yet, and then something else happened to actually make it good. Oh, wonderful! No, it's not over yet, and it would go backwards and forwards. Yeah, and sometimes you think it's good, bad, it's good, it's bad, right? You don't really know, right? But so of course he went through pain. He went through terrible pain, terrific pain. But great Tzaddikim said, well, okay, that people wouldn't make a sacrifice. Know that the greatness that was achieved at the end of it, wow, that was worth it. That was worth it, you could say, maybe. So it's not like he didn't go through any sorrows, but ultimately his favoritism led to something very, very positive, if you want to say that. So therefore, Yaakov himself didn't have any, he had no issue, had no problem. Right? And finally, just perhaps to mention to you the other idea that spiritually speaking, there's a difference between Manasseh and Ephraim. Remember Manasseh and Ephraim. Why did he call him Manasseh? Manasseh, because Hashem caused me to forget my house, the house of my father. Now we said a couple of weeks ago, it doesn't mean he caused them to forget, because what would we say? I'm naming somebody after somebody I want to forget. Well, first of all, why would you want to forget your home? And then when you mention the name, well, you're always remembering it. You're always remembering, aren't you? If I tell you, don't think about oranges, right? Do not think about oranges. And I keep telling you, stop thinking about oranges, right? Well, does that make any sense? Yeah, exactly. So therefore, what it actually meant was he was worried. He didn't want to forget. That was the interesting thing. He named him that in order to remind him. It's the exact opposite of what it looks like. People don't quite get that. Everybody gets that wrong, right? And then we have Ephraim comes along. Ephraim, well, because Hashem made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. And everything turned out good. And had children, wonderful, right? So in a sense, this is what happened in reality for Yosef. This was the reality, right? Things started off really tough, really difficult, but there was a possibility of a tendency of forgetting. So this is This is, in a sense, the odyssey of the Jew. We come from a very great and holy place, Shemayim. Our souls are part of Hashem, and Hashem sends us down into the body, away from home, with a mission, and the mission is to bring light into the world. Okay. Now we should never forget where we come from, and we should never forget our soul and how great we are, and what Hashem hopes for us. All great things, right? So the first step is taka, not to forget. Don't forget where you came from. Yes, like we've spoken about being an ambassador, right? We've spoken a few times, right? Okay, and then comes the idea. Oh, once you've managed that, you can achieve wonderful things. You're funny, you get fruitful in the land of your affliction. That's the Seder. Yaakov's cheshbon, in a sense, Yaakov's rendering. He's like already. First stage is like. Of course, the first stage. What's the real tachlis? The real tachlis, the real purpose of life is to achieve, is to have fruit in the exile. So therefore, he put his right hand on the throne, because from his perspective, we're not looking at it in terms of practicality. He's like saying, this is the tachlis. The important thing is being fruitful, even in the Golos, which of course, that's what Yaakov, we just said it right at the beginning, the 17 best years of his life. Because the great achievements of building up Klal Yisrael, building up the whole of Jewish people, fruitful. They were fruitful and multiplied. That's the tachlis. Then you got a people that you can come home. They come to Eretz Yisrael and inhabit and elevate the whole world. That's why he favored him. That's why he put his right hand on him. You see, that's the key. That's the important thing. The Menashe kind of goes without saying. Yes, you have to remember where you come from. Yes, you have to know who you are. Then you know where you're going to. But ultimately, Ephraim is the key, the fruitfulness of your avodah in the exile. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our time on this, and so just if there are any questions at all, any questions, comments?
I just wonder this is God, that is that good? Maybe not.
Which part of the
I'll show you there.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's
Well, when
Yeah.
you say about the fruitfulness, you're really saying about the action, because we often don't survive to see the fruitfulness. Like you said, you do something and then you think it's bad and then it's good and then it's bad and it's good. So
Yeah.
so the most important thing seems to be what you do, even though you might not see the fruitful result. You don't get big results. Yeah.
Well, okay, that's something else. The fact of the matter is that everything you do, if you do something good, if you do you do a mitzvah, you do a good deed, there are always fruits.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily always see the fruits. I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. An amazing story that was sent around just now. An amazing story about a guy who told this story. He said he was a guy. He grew up a religious guy. Grew up from he went to YU. I was a from guy, and then whatever, as life went on, whatever, he drifted away. And so somebody one day, it comes to mitzvah tank. A mitzvah tank somebody came in, and it was what was a mitzvah tank? It was a certain rabbi. It was a rabbi who met him somewhere. I don't know if it was on the street. Oh, he was sitting on a table. Sitting on a table like sometimes I do here, and asking people to put on tefillin. And he hadn't. But he told me, he said, yeah, I'm okay. Fine. I've done something. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So he left. But this guy felt so bad. It was so that he had lied about putting on tefillin because he didn't really want, what I mean? He felt so bad. He tells the story. He said, I'm going to put on tefillin every day. Okay. He put on tefillin every day. And he said, but this guy was years later that he ran into this rabbi. And he said, I want you to know. And sometimes, we judge results by what we see. But, you came and you asked me to put on tefillin. And I said, I'd put it on. And he told them the story. He says, I hadn't put. He said, but you're asking me, even though you thought this was like there's nothing. It wasn't. It was the ultimate failure because not only had he not put on, but he didn't even know he hadn't put on, so he couldn't do anything. So, and yet as a result of that, you should know that your midst of doing that, I put on tefillin every day since then. And it's like, whoa, like an amazing thing. You can never judge. Yeah. But it was interesting, but from the rabbi's point of view, he didn't realize what he's doing. I heard another story about some other guy who said that this guy was in New York and he kept people asking, put on film. Always said no. Eventually, he was worn down. Eventually, he said, okay, I'll do it. And then he became a lot more from whatever. And he was mentioning, he says that although people didn't realize that the times that people said no, he said, even though it was a no, it was just a way to get me to the 10th time, and it would say yes. But if you wouldn't have the 9 no's, you don't get to the 10th. So you shouldn't think even the no is actually a success, because you actually get me to the end of the church. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I wish you all a good Shabbos, and please God, we'll see you again. Bez Hashem. We'll see you again. Bez it. Same channel, same planet. Everybody's invited. Yeah. So what was your?
Today's Sophia. Wondering why.
About the
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Oh yes. What about it?
Chosen. I mean,
Or why is it mentioned?
Yeah, I'm just wondering. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a certain specific reason. I'll explain to you.
Yeah, please.
There's a specific reason about this. I'll explain it to you.
Go to America. Yeah. We're gonna do Vegas this time.